studied civil engineering school.
Okay.
I have friends who graduated from that same department working on the Dangote refinery project. I think, according to them, it's the largest construction project going on in Africa presently, according to them. And what they made clear is that the job is very casual. It's a contract job. Graduates being paid a little above minimum wage, and because it's on contract basis, it's a during the meeting with the CSO, between the CSO and the NLC, it was raised with the NLC that why is the NLC not speaking up about the casualizing of workers by Dangote, the richest man in Africa? Or does he not have money to pay workers? That's the point. Oh, I think we have to maybe discuss our billionaires another day, because the way you are the richest man and you are the richest borrower at the same time, all of that is interesting.
This stuff and
balance it, and we are good. All of that is very interesting.
Hi, you're welcome to Akweya TV. The NLC just called off a planned strike that was intended for the 27th of January, and another one that was for the 1st of February, or is the 2nd. But that's not the issue. The issue is people are wondering, should Nigerians still follow the leadership of the NLC when there is a protest against anti-people policies? Historically, the Nigeria Labour Congress has been the organization that has led the people into battle against unfair practices by the government. We have seen that in so many spheres. But of late, as more organizations began to rise up, as citizens groups began to, gather themselves, there is a feeling that the NLC has betrayed the trust of the people. And more worry is being expressed about the leadership of the Nigeria Labour Congress when it comes to protests in the country. And this is not new, really. About a decade ago, which is 10 years ago, in January like this, we had a situation where Nigerians had to protest the rise in the costs or in the price, the pump price of fuel. And that was the well-known Occupy Nigeria fuel subsidy protest in January 2012, when the Goodluck Jonathan administration then arbitrarily hiked the price of PMS. Then this happened spontaneously. Nigerians who were in their villages, who had gone for Christmas, just on the 1st of January, could no longer travel back, and people rose to protest. But somehow within civil society came up, then the NLC joined, and there were negotiations, and without any change, we saw that the protest was called off. Now, a lot of protests later, we have had the EndSARS, we have had the commemoration of EndSARS, we have had so many different protests now. And a big activist, an emerging activist who has a strong voice, has written an article in which he adduced why Nigerians should no longer follow the lead of the Nigeria Labour Congress. So I have that activist with me in the studio. His name is Comrade Ibukun Omole.
Yes, Omole.
Omole.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you think Nigerians should just self-organize and go? How would this happen?
Well, I think the NLC calls the protest, as we've seen recently, called the protest with the hope to stand at the head of the mood, the hunger against the fuel price increment, and use the fact that they stand at the head of it to behead that resistance. And it has played out just recently.
Okay,
And
they stand at the head of the resistance to behead the resistance.
And I think that's exactly what played out.
Oh.
And the truth is, the hunger of Nigerians against their real experiences, their lived experiences, especially for price increment, cannot be beheaded because the hunger will always be there. What happens most times is the hunger turns into something else. Those who turn it into crime, those who turn it on each other, and all that. And insecurity, mental disorders, mental depression, all of that continues in the country. But what we saw during HENSAS was that a spontaneous movement started. And strikingly, the NLC did not release one press statement to solidarize with Nigerians, with young people who want a better life, who want to be free from police brutality. And the HENSAS was not just demanding an end to police brutality, it was asking for good governance, it was asking for... there was a time where a trend on Twitter during HENSAS was put politicians on minimum wage. I mean, minimum wage is an NLC issue.
Yeah.
So who should respond to that if not NLC? But the only time they had to respond to was later, where they tactically condemned the NSAS movement as an anarchy. And so this is the trend we've been seeing over time. So when NLC said they were going to protest, we were happy. But a lot of us said they should not betray. And we had a CSOs meeting here in Abuja. We made it clear again that they should not betray. But upon the announcement of the government that the subsidy in quotes will not, the removal will be suspended, the NLC grabbed on that and suspended protest. But the interesting thing is that even the NLC themselves have at one point or the other called ministers in this government, called people in this government liars. Yeah. And so it's funny how the same NLC will just hear a promise and on that basis call off the protest if they were not actually interested, if they were actually interested in protesting in the first instance. So I think as Nigerians, we need to start looking at the best way to self-organize is to organize around our realities. One reality is that we all have to work to survive. Okay. And that's what makes NLC important. Another reality is that we all want to fight back. That's the reality now. I mean, a lot of people want to fight back. Okay. From the reality I live in. They fight back in different ways. Some go to fight back in church. Some go to pray, and that's their own fight back. So, but the reality is a lot of people want to fight back. But those that organize them around their works, which is the NLC, are not doing anything, are obviously trying to betray at every chance they get. So the thing to do now is to see how we can organize ourselves independently of NLC, with the hope that if we organize ourselves independently of the NLC, it would wake up the rank and file members of the NLC, who are a smaller percentage, we are a minority percentage actually of the population of adults in Nigeria. Okay. Such that when we go out and the rank and file workers wake up, if we can get to that stage, it will be easy for the rank and file workers to say, we don't want this kind of leadership that does not care about our struggles. And that way we can actually change NLC. If they don't change, that way we can move forward.
Okay. So this organizing, there are a lot of artisanal workers that are not necessarily a part of the NLC. How are you approaching, or how do you propose this approach should be? So vulcanizers on the streets and all of that, are they part of the NLC?
Some informal workers are part of the free centers, NLC, TUC. Some are not. But I think there is an overlap that is making it hard, because it's hard for people to protest against themselves. What makes people join unions is when a union is ready to protest for their interests, ready to go on strike for their interests, ready to take actions for their interests. But what we've seen in recent times is, for example, unions of vulcanizers would have interests, unions of agberos would have interests, unions of drivers would have interests, but their union leadership does not do anything for them. I mean, we have NURTW, but most times it has become a union of political thugs instead of a union of drivers. Recently in Lagos, some drivers actually came together form a new union, self-organized themselves, against another union, which is the Union Rights of EU, because that union is exploiting them. So I think that self-organization would happen through people's initiatives. It's not possible to push people to do what they don't want to do yet. But the example I made just to show you that it started happening. People are starting to organize themselves. And it has started since, at least noticeably to me, since the NSAS movement. People organized themselves. So it's very possible.
The thing with organizing is that it also becomes bureaucratic, over time. Because I think this is what has happened to the NLC. The NLC was pro-people, but when you bureaucratize, then that bureaucracy is what can be hijacked. Are you afraid of, is there any difference in how you're proposing this organizing?
Well, I think the philosophy behind organizing people is to bring in their collective intelligence. Is to say there is no best among us, but if we all come together, we can be our best. That's the philosophy behind organizing people. But what we've inherited, maybe through the colonial education, what we've inherited is the kind of organizing where someone is the representative who knows best, who is voted because they know best. And so what happens is they only issue directives to those in the rank and file, not the rank and file coming together to decide what they will do in the leadership. So I think that has been the major bane of organizing, and that's what we need to change. And for example, during the NSAS movement, what we saw was hashtags forming demands. And those hashtags came from average people who felt this one is my reality. Okay, they're talking about end police brutality, but I feel minimum wage is my reality. So put politicians on minimum wage. At least if they're minimum wage, they will learn to increase the minimum wage like 50,000 because they also want to collect money too. So all of that became the realities coming from people. But we must also understand that it might have been impossible for this to happen 50 years ago. And that was what made NLC relevant, that kind of organizing relevant then. Now we have developments in technology that could make self-organizing easier. And we saw the role Twitter played in NSAS, such that the federal government had to even ban afterwards. So I think the form of that self-organizing would some form of an horizontal movement where people can come together, put their ideas together, and execute together. Asking representatives to go ahead and defend a certain interest, most times those representatives cannot feel for everybody at the same time. We are humans. So I think this is the beginning of an evolution in our way of organizing. And when we express this, a lot of people say we are confused. What we have as an alternative is a direction, not a position, not an opposition. When NSAS protesters were saying leaderlessness, they were not making a position. They were saying this is the direction we should be going as a society. But we are stuck with this representative democracy we inherited from colonizers and all that. And their politics is fair. So they might not need a stronger opposition like we need somehow. Here we need a stronger opposition. We need to go in a stronger direction. And that also brought out the consciousness of leaderlessness during NSAS protests. So I think that's the direction we should be going. It's not a detailed position yet. It's a direction we should move into.
Okay. When you have this kind of thing, let me just, for us to be clear for the viewer who is watching, are you saying we should disband NLC, or are you saying there should be a reform of the NLC?
Yeah, I'm saying we should be open-minded to both. To both our possibilities. Yes, both possibilities.
Okay. Isn't that harsh?
A time might come when the NLC might become irrelevant. A time might come where a new form of organizing might take shape that would make the NLC's form of organizing irrelevant. But the time might not come soon. We might still need NLC for practical purposes at this stage. And that's why it's more of a direction that we are open-minded. We are saying we want to independently organize Nigerian masses. Nigerian masses should independently organize themselves wherever they are, around their own interests, around their own realities. When they do that, it is going to be possible to get into the rank and file of the NLC, and then use the rank and file of the NLC to democratically ensure that the NLC is reformed. But if that does not happen, then another organization might have to come up to take that place, to take that role.
You are seeing a rise of organizations by the ruling class, the Progressive Governors Forum, Nigeria Governors Forum. They are also organizing to remain relevant. Are you worried about the implications of this in our kind of society?
Well, I think the reason why it seems to look like the ruling class is more organized, they organize the masses more. They have structures and codes. The reason why it seems like that is because we have not done our best in getting the masses to independently organize ourselves. For example, the Progressive Governors Forum, there is a Southern Governors platform that is organizing Nigerians practically around ethnic sentiments. But ethnic sentiments are not that strong. Actually, they are not that strong. Ideally, they are not that strong. The reason why they are so strong here is because the things that could connect us as humans, the things that could connect us socially as humans, are not available. If those things were there, they will fill the space that ethnic sentiments are filling. For example,
we have fuel price that is hitting everybody, increasing, so those should connect everyone.
Yeah.
And they should rally around that, isn't it?
So now our role, you're very right, our role is to now point to those economic realities as the reason to organize around each other, as a reason to connect. But until we have those organizations, those self-organizations, those in grassroots, citizen-controlled organizations, the organizations that would appeal most to the masses would be those organizing around ethnic sentiments. And it poses a risk. It poses a risk that everybody becomes everybody's enemy at the end of the day, rather than connect with one another. But economic realities will show us that we are each other's shade. We are all shades of one another because we all have to eat, we all have to survive, we all are affected by fuel price. It will show us which class we stand in. So I think that is a sense of the focus on organizing people around the economic realities. That's the sense of that.
You said the NLC also did not speak when there was a tax on food and beverage.
They spoke. That was a question I was making. They spoke, but what they said was obviously just like the position on the subsidy too. What they said was only to corroborate the government and the management of food and beverages companies, and then to use workers to defend the management of food and beverage companies in an intra-class struggle between the capitalists and the politicians.
For those who do not know, how you said, maybe just
what I mean by that intra-class struggle is that the food tax, when it was announced, the federal government obviously knew it was they just needed to get more revenue, and they felt on each liter, and they felt of drinks and alcohol, and they felt it would be a nice way to use the sentiment of Nigerians that drinks is giving you cancer, it might give you cancer, alcohol is bad for you and all that, and use that sentiment to get money from the masses. But as we know, tax should not be on the consumers. It should be on those producers if you really want to address cancer. Because those producers will find someone to sell their goods to. If you don't, they will find ways to ensure they sell it to us actually. They will find better ways to advertise and ensure that even at higher price we'll still buy it. So the tax should be on the producers. If you really want to address,
that they make less money and then are less able to
produce. If you think that thing is actually dangerous, but instead it shows that the FG does not clearly that is dangerous if they are taxing consumers. Because when the minister was announcing that tax, what she announced is that the drinkers would have to pay more. They didn't say that the companies will have to pay more, and that means you are putting the tax on consumers and
who are already paying value-added tax
already. So all of that shows that both classes both of the capitalists and the politicians, both sides want more profit, and they are trying to use the masses and the workers for that. But the NS's position was interesting. Now, the NS's position and the NUFBTE, the FOBTOB, what they said was that that tax meant that Nigeria automatically meant that the Nigerian workers will lose their job, companies will not be able to function effectively, and it was, they made a statement where they said it would affect, I can't quote exactly now, that it will affect negatively the manufacturers.
Because the tax
it's supposed to affect
the people drinking.
So what is supposed to be defending? Yeah. So it shows that the issues were lumped up by the NLC in their position to make sure that they can defend. And the NUFBT went to the extent of saying that they are not protesting. They are not on the street protesting against that tax because the organized private sector appealed to them not to protest. And it then becomes funny. Who is controlling the unions? Yeah. Is it the manufacturers, the management, or the workers? Yeah. They said they would not preempt their democratic organs, but they have been planning a protest. And they actually preempted their democratic organs to plan that protest. So all of that shows something. There is a problem of using the ignorance, the illiteracy. Let's not call it ignorance, because people actually know. They know things. Education just allows us to put those things we know together. Yeah. There's an attempt to use the illiteracy of a population that was deliberately made illiterate, to use that to confuse us. And so in the case of the drinks tax, normally tax should be on companies. And for that reason, let the companies go handle themselves with the government and argue themselves with the government why they don't want the tax. But you're accepting automatically that the tax is for the consumers, even though the law does not expressly state that. Yeah. And you are saying that you want to fight on behalf of the consumers, yet your directives are coming from the manufacturers. Wow. So it shows where the NSC stands.
Okay. We'll go for a break briefly.
All right.
When we come back, I know we'll talk about the Dangote refineries, and you said something about the position that was taken by the NLC and the workers, really, and how it seems to be also problematic. Yeah. Okay, so we'll be right back. If you are watching us on YouTube, please share this video. Let your colleagues join in this conversation. And if you have comments, please put the comments in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned. Welcome back from the break. If you've been with us, we've been discussing the issue of the leadership of the NLC with respect to protesting anti-people policies. Should Nigerians just self-organize and take their destiny in their own hands? And I've been having a conversation with Comrade Ibukun Omole, who is giving us very interesting points. You also, in your article in the National Record, you talked about the fact that Dangote is establishing a refinery and that it's a problem the way the Nigerian Labour Congress and the workers' unions are responding to that. What can you explain to us what you meant?
Yeah, the response of the unions to the fuel price increment was emphasizing local production. While the traditional position of the NLC has always been no to deregulation. Okay. That's a popular position of the NLC over time.
But is local production not supposed to be the good thing?
It's supposed to be a good thing. Okay. But while we raise local production, we also emphasize, because normally we should be producing locally. We have the oil. Yeah. So we all make sure we emphasize the regulation, because we know local production has to come in at some point, because it's our oil. It's practical that we do it locally. We emphasize the regulation. The regulation means that emphasize opposition to the regulation. Sorry,
that I wanted to say.
Opposition to the regulation. Sorry, opposition to regulation means that the sector should not be left to the whims and caprices of the private sector.
Yeah.
The essence of that emphasis of NLC's position to the opposition to the regulation is to ensure that we can say there should be local production, and that local production should not also repeat the problem of the imported refined oil.
Okay.
It should be in the case where we produce locally through our public refineries, and so that Nigerians can have democratic control of those public refineries and say, this is the oil we are producing, and this is what we need. So what do we need to ensure that we produce enough for our consumption as Nigerians? And so it will then put the task on politicians that you have to ensure these things work because they are public. But what we've seen in the past is people tend to be silent about nationalization of, especially radicals tend to be silent about nationalization because we've all submitted to the propaganda that nationalization is not effective and then the private sector is the most effective. But Dangote is here to make his money. And that means that, you can see from the example of the other sectors, Dangote has almost monopoly over. And you see how he controls those sectors for his own profit. And so Vice President Oshibajo would go and make it look like Dangote refinery is a solution. Akumi additional will go and make it look like Dangote refinery is a solution. But what we are seeing with the other sectors where Dangote has control shows that Dangote refinery is not going to be a solution. It's going to make our problems even fiercer. And I felt that the NLC should have been more clear on that. That opposition to the regulation, which it used to be traditionally. But this time it was softer. The position was softer on the regulation. And so that's created a scenario where people start suspecting. Why is NLC not speaking up? For example, Dangote refinery. I studied civil engineering in school. I have friends who graduated from that same department working on the Dangote refinery project. I think, according to them, is the largest construction project going on in Africa presently, according to them. And what they made clear is that the job is very casual. It's a contract job. Graduates being paid a little above minimum wage. And because it's on contract basis, it's a during the meeting with the CSOs, between the CSOs and the NLC, it was raised with the NLC that why is the NLC not speaking up about the casualization of workers by Dangote, the richest man in Africa? Or does he not have money to pay workers? That's the point.
Own banks, you know.
Oh, I think we have to maybe discuss our billionaires another day because the way you are the richest man and you are the richest borrower at the same time, all of that is interesting.
This stuff and
balance it, and we are good. All of that is very interesting. But what we've seen is a sort of softness on companies that are smaller. NLC seems to be fairer to workers in that they still come up to defend workers. But on big companies like the Dangotes, the BUA, I think I mentioned BUA in there, they don't respond as such because obviously they don't want to confront those billionaires. That's the only thing we can suspect from that.
Are you saying that there has been a capture of the NLC? Is that what you are saying? That NLC is now part of the elite?
Well, I'm not the one saying it. Our reality is saying it.
Okay.
What we've seen in the past, what we've seen this week is enough to say that. What we've seen since Sunday, what we've seen NLC called off the protest as if on cue. The minister said we have suspended planned removal of fuel subsidy. Ahmed Lawan came to say, oh yeah, NLC call off the protest now, since we've suspended it. And as if on cue, as if that is the consistency of NLC that tells them what to do. NLC immediately did that.
And NLC had an online meeting and did not consult with any other group?
They said they had their
online meeting.
they said they had their structure.
Yeah, and then they called.
And interestingly, their structure were just NEC members. And even the NEC members, according to what we heard, there was disagreements, even at the NEC level of the NLC. But how do you call a democratic organization that wants to fight for democracy in Nigeria? Because part of NLC is the demands, part of the organized labor's demands is to ensure that Nigeria is democratically governed. And we see that in JUSUN struggles, local government autonomy in Oge, judiciary workers all asking for autonomy of the different arms of the government. So it shows that workers actually truly want a democratic but how can NLC fight for a democratic Nigeria when the NLC itself is not democratic? How do you call off a protest by just calling the neck?
You've seen that happen in many of the structures.
But for example, ASU.
Yes.
You've seen the way ASU call off their protest.
Yeah.
They would say the federal government has given this agreement. I want to take it to all of our branches, and then they will tell us what each branch voted. Should we still continue? Should we call off the strike? We've seen that example. So it's not alien to be democratic. It's not alien.
And we say JAF. I mean, coming back to the issue of regulation, deregulation, opposition to deregulation, the Joint Action Front led by Dr. Dikko Fashion and Dikko Fashion is former ASU president.
Yes,
one of the most conscious, and the secretary Biodun Aremu. They released that statement in which they also emphasized that point, the fight against deregulation. Are you seeing that are they in conflict with the NLC, as it were?
Well, it's not easy to speak for JAF, but I'm not sure any two organizations have the same exact positions on the same thing. Yeah. Because if they have
this is a fundamental
difference. I know. But the JAF and the NLC are not always in total agreement.
I remember in 2012.
The JAF came out before NLC.
Yeah, but in 2012, when the discussions were going to be had with the federal government, it was Dr. Dikko Fashion was part of the group that negotiated with the.
But at the point
that protest.
I'm not sure I have that information, but from what the information I had, those who were supposed to represent the civil society in that negotiation were just cut off, and they were calling throughout the middle of the night when the NLC leadership were the ones who went to actually negotiate and left out those they were supposed to take with them from the civil society. I'm not sure. This is all what we heard. We don't have any way to confirm that.
Minister for Labour, there were meetings where, I know Dr. Dikko was part of that. Anyway, I'm not
okay. Because I'm curious about the agreement to call off the protest. Yeah. What the information we have is that the all CSOs were sidelined.
Yes, CSOs.
In that agreement to call off the protest.
Not all. Okay. But anyway, I find that difference in the positions released
fundamental.
Yeah. That the JAF is taking a position that is fundamentally different, especially on the issue of fuel subsidy. Yeah. So that brings us to the next point, because I think which group issued a statement today or yesterday about probing the whole fuel subsidy regime and the corruption around it, and probing the consumption, the estimated consumption of petroleum products. So, do you even agree there's a subsidy? Because this government refused that point of subsidy in the first place, and now we're seeing it do even worse than what it protested against.
Well, I think we have a government that tries on propaganda. If there is no subsidy, what is the PIA removing? What is the petroleum industry bill removing? What was legislated out of what was the bill that was approved in August, and that's to go into it would become active in by February now. What was that bill addressing? Are you saying what something that was made into law does not exist? Something that a law is trying to remove, we are saying it does not exist. You see, there's that contradiction now. So, from our end, as citizens, we have to focus on what's in the constitution. Does the law say that subsidy exists? Because at a point before Buhari came, they said there was no subsidy. But it's in there's provision for it in the appropriation bill, in the budget, everything. So we have to focus on what exists in that legally, what the law sees. You have to focus on that. The rest is just propaganda, just say, yes, subsidy exists. What we should now point out is that subsidy is a technical issue. The FG is trying to reduce the argument to a technical issue, and we should not follow them there. The real argument on the end of the Nigerian masses, the reality is we want fuel prices to be stable. We want it to be affordable. We want it as affordable as possible because we think we have the oil and we shouldn't be suffering that. And other petroleum products too, gas, kerosene, everything. On the other hand, the other thing that Nigerians believe can solve problems and ensure that the technicality of subsidy does not even come into play is public refineries, where Nigerians can control directly. So now the technicality of subsidy is the government's job. That's why we elected them. So now making us all billionaires are the problem. It's not the government. The government is the government. Dragging us into that is not our problem.
Let me take you on that point of the public refineries. What should we do with them if we are saying they are not productive? We have 4 public refineries, right?
Yeah.
And then we're saying they are not productive, and they still receive monies for salaries of staff,
upgrade,
their turnaround maintenance, and all of that. By your argument, are you saying lay off all these workers, sell off these refineries? Is that your point? Or are you saying, hey, these refineries, look, stop importing and revitalize? What's the position you will take on that? Because if you do that, then you are needing to sack workers, which the NLC will be up in arms against you for.
I think our position is clearly that the public refineries should be revitalized. It's clear.
They say they are too old and the parts are no longer being produced, so they need to build new refineries and stuff.
If they are going to build new refineries, are they not going to need workers to build it?
Yeah.
Are they not going to need the experience of those workers who used to work in old refineries for the new refineries?
They have old knowledge.
Can they be retrained? All of that is the question that we should be asking. And I think we should also ask, why does nationalism not work in countries like Nigeria? It's because the democracy here is just propaganda. The last election that was held in Nigeria, the Anambra election, I think the person won by above 5% of the registered voters. About 10% came out to vote. I'm not sure of the figures now, but as low as that made Soludo the governor. And it shows you that democracy does not actually, people don't see this government as their government. They buy their own food, they take care of their own health, they build their own roads. So there is no government. It's just propaganda. In Nigeria, there is no government. We need a democracy. And that democracy does not exist.
There is also no sustained action on the part of activists, right? Seems activists also have a knee-jerk kind of reaction to what's happening. I remember in 2012, before 2012, they said, when we remove subsidy, we're going to invest in buying public transportation, vehicles for public transportation. We're going to have, and then they brought the Dr. Christopher Colladi committee and all of that. Nobody seems to emphasize those anymore.
I think the question to address first is to say, when the federal government makes promises of, okay, we offer palliatives, we do this, I think the first thing we should do is to say, keep your promises first, and then we'll support you on the next one. But the federal government wants to remove subsidy first before offering. Why not offer the palliatives first? Let's see the action. Let's see the structure to be sure that the palliatives will come. Yeah. For example, during COVID-19, nobody, almost, I don't know anyone who got the money. I don't know. Maybe some people got, I don't know. I don't know anyone who got most of the palliatives the city offer. So if we don't see that in action, how can we trust you that you give transport allowance when you increase us? And then those who analyze the shows that it even costs more. And now the FGU was ready to offer that transport allowance, is saying that if they have to pay the subsidy that costs less, they would have to borrow money, using us as an excuse to borrow money. And so all of that shows that the FG is taking us in the territory that does not belong to us. The question should be, that is your job. We give you, except the FG wants to also come to our conclusion that we should move in the direction of leaderlessness, except they want to come in that direction. But if they're not coming in that direction, then we give you a job, do it. If you can't do it, let someone else who can do it come. I think that should be our stand. We won't be the ones to teach you your job, that will give you on that basis that you know how to do it. And sorry, you said activists sustained action. I think I wanted not to sustain action. I wanted to point out that we need to, as activists, we need to start pointing out to everyone we can reach that we are all activists. We should all be activists. We should all be politically active. That's the meaning of activism. Because either you like it or not, politics affects your life. You might not be able to be a representative. You might not be interested in being a representative, but at least defend your own life. So I think we should all be activists.
Are you aware of the People's Alternative Political Movement?
Yes, I'm active in it.
You're active in it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You're one of the troublemakers, right? Well, so now when people, let me finally say, when people accuse you of being a communist or a socialist, how is your reaction? Is this right? Is this wrong?
I grew up in Nigeria, and based on the adulterated curriculum of the country, what they tell you is that communism, I think it's I shouldn't call it adulterated. I think it's peripheral. The peripheral curriculum, they'll tell you communism leads to totalitarianism, and capitalism leads to democracy. Nigeria plays capitalism. Where's the democracy? Most of the countries that operate capitalism across Africa, most West African countries now, they have been more cool. Between the last year and this year, there have been more coups in West Africa than there was a democratic transition.
Even the US, that is capitalist, has had to bail out companies, because if it were complete capitalism, why didn't you just allow?
And the US that was democratic had an election where the person who had more votes was the one who lost the election in 2016. So we know that capitalism is not democratic, but they told us in school so that's where the blackmail comes from, where people trying to call you socialist and believe you cringe because they called you a socialist. I believe that socialism is the direction we should go to, because even capitalist countries have attempted to go in that direction. The Scandinavian countries are going in that direction.
Our constitution is actually
moving in that direction, because you can't actually sustain society without moving in the socialist direction. Socialism is not a foreign idea. It is the reality. No one can survive alone. Anybody who wants to try should try it.
Why have you guys not produced a Nigerian alternative like the Chinese produce their socialist market economy?
Well, I think the Chinese are blending in with their own reality. Well, I refrain from defining the Chinese example as most people try to paint it as a perfect example of socialism. It can move in that direction, a little in that direction, but we know all the limitations, especially it's very undemocratic as a country. Yeah, the repression of activists in China, disappearance of activists, actually, not just repression. So we might not want to go into all that. But here in Nigeria, our reality is that, and I think that's why we must take a more original approach to socialism here. Not more original in that it will be less socialist than, but it has to be more socialist than those advanced countries. Because those advanced countries have some form of capitalism is never fair. It's never fair. But because it's an attempt to profit from people, it's not always really fair. But in those countries, there's still a form of fairer in quotes capitalism than in Nigeria. So the socialism they need for their country to survive might be softer. So if socialists in Nigeria are following the socialists in America or in Europe, believing that the hardest fight that those one can put up should be our hardest fight too, we might be going about it wrongly. We have to put up another fight than those ones in Europe, than the socialists in Europe, because a capitalism here is more barbaric. I mean, Dangote is the richest man in Africa, and the region he comes from is one of the poorest in Africa.
So what's your alternative?
Yeah.
What would you propose?
We should go towards socialism. We should go towards a more social economy, a more social politics. And that means that we should move towards an economy where not one person is not in control. Rather, people are coming together to control how work is done, how production is made, how things are consumed. And I believe that applies to the oil sector too. The amount of environmental problems in the Niger Delta, although they try to blame it on the people, they are illegally refining. That's why they're suits. They are the one bunkering the pipeline, all of that. They try to blame it on the people. But we all know that the major climate issues, the major environmental issues in the South is because of the oil companies. It's because they put profit before anybody. And so why not let those people who are going to be affected control that economy, control those economic sectors, and see if they want to do it better than the capitalists? Yeah, they would. They would.
Okay, so that means Dangote will have to cede some of his power and means of production. That means Otedola will have to cede some. That means.
Does it belong to them?
No, I'm just asking.
Actually, does it belong to them?
Because I always say we should, the practical aspect of what we are demanding.
What we are demanding, yes.
When we demand socialism, we're saying, hey,
what do you want
to happen? The dominant means of production has to be owned
by the people,
by the government, as it were, right? The dominant means. So you have to now check what are those. So
I think
production of oil.
Those major sectors, truly don't belong to them.
No, we're not talking belonging as in that absolute, but that right now in the current system.
I'm laying a template because when you want to say some things in this part of the world, you have to lay a template because when people hear it, they can cringe. Yeah, we have to take the weight of Dangote. We have to take the weight of all of this. And taking the weight is not by going there to hijack their weight. It's to say that this sugar company does not belong to you. You exploited the value of the people to get this amount of weight out of the sugar company, and we are taking it back. And those that are softer but still in the same direction will say that give them a heavy tax. Yeah, that's a way to do it too. Those that are tougher will say take control of this.
Give them a heavy tax, they transfer it to the consumer.
Now, that's the point of being soft on them, because if you give them a heavy tax, they will transfer to the consumers, and you have to take the stress off trying to enforce that they don't transfer to consumers again. So why not take control? So it comes back to what we are saying.
Wow, Comrade Ibukun, it's been so exciting talking with you. I mean, like we can go on and on and on. Yes. So your final thoughts on this would be that Nigerians should self-organize.
Yes.
And how that should do that?
I think there are pockets of protests going on all over the country right now. On the day the NLC called of their protest, I think it was truck drivers that protested in a state in the south. I can't remember the state now. I think Imo State. In Owerri, truck drivers protested on that same day they called of their protest. Drivers are protesting insecurity on the road every time, protesting extortion by the police. And they are workers. Truck drivers are workers. I mean, the number of truck drivers Dangote employ, they are so much. We have people protesting on on their land being hijacked. We have those in the Niger Delta protesting on the environmental damage being done. We have pockets of protest about electricity.
Insecurity up north and in
Up north.
different parts of the country.
So we have many
People are
pockets of
protesting.
protest in the country. What we should be doing is to encourage Nigerians to start to organize around these issues. So whenever you see such protest, attend, join, link your issues with it, link your relatives with it. And as we move further, we will start coming together. It's not going to be an easy process, but we can do it.
I mean, new assignment. I'll become a professional protester. And then joining every protest.
Yes,
anywhere.
we should all be. We should all be. Politics are life. We should all be.
Thank you so much
Thank you
for
very much.
having to be available on our show. And for those of you who have watched us, we don't take you for granted, especially you on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok, several platforms. We know you're streaming this and your data. We respect your data. Thank you so much. Please share this conversation. Put your opinions in and let's have a conversation going. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on another episode of our show.